Hey everyone, check those levels real quick, sounding good. So this should be a fairly quick video, but it's a pretty cool effect here. It's probably something you've seen before. You may have seen it with particles instead. And I did a similar video to it before, but this is better. Not better, this is sort of another way. You'll understand what I mean. I'll show the difference here in a minute between the previous one and this one. But again, you've seen this effect before, but it looks pretty badass, and it's really, really easy. So let's just get right to it. Here, double check, they're doing okay here. Sweet. All right. So like a lot of the effects we make, they're simple. And you take all these sort of little tips and things to try and just you add it to your tool set. So let's just get right to it. Open up Blender here. Delete that. Delete. Shift add a plane. And so this won't be the exact thing we're doing. I'm just going to show you sort of differences. Oh my gosh, excuse me, there it is. From what we've done like previously. So go ahead and unwrap. We'll do project from view bounds. We want to project to the whole texture here. We'll go ahead and open. Let's see. So this is the effect I have, or the texture I have for the one that you just saw. And so the idea, so let's say, we had this idea, this is an effect I'd seen before. I don't know how people normally do it. But seemed like it was something like this. And you could do it with particles, but I like to avoid particles. I mentioned it before. So my first thought was, okay, it's, it's starting out in the middle here. It's going out this way, we're thinking up and down. And then it's just, going in like that. Why is that going weird? So, you can see as we do that, get some weird things here. So maybe we could try joining this and then doing it. And like, that's okay. So maybe we should do this, add some more verts. Grab these, scale them in, and that's looking okay. So let's, grab here and kind of scroll it. And I mean, that's okay. For certain effects, that looks awesome. And that's what we did in a previous video. It's kind of shrinking down here. It's kind of hard to see with the highlighting, but that can look cool, but it's not quite, it just doesn't have the umph. So, and this has probably been solved, quote unquote, before, but the trick was, by scaling it down, the texture is scaling down. So what we want to do is actually this. Instead of scaling it, we're going to change the whole direction. So in my head, it's more like, let's go ahead and, don't know why I did that. We're going along here, and as we animate the UVs, so now we have this path. So maybe this is like, this fiery path that we have now. So that looks cool, But, when we scale it like this, it's like pinching, and we don't want that. So what we want to do is actually take this whole thing over like this. And so now you can see, you know, it's not scaled. It's just sort of going in a different direction. I mean, technically you could do something more like this, and you could experiment yourself and actually rotate it like that. But we're going to do what's called shearing, which is this. So you kind of keep the general shape in one direction, but you're kind of, or not shape, but the general scale in one direction, but on the other axis, it's, you know, it's sheared. There's actually a shear option. Talked about it before, Control-Alt-Shift-S, and then you can hit X or Y to go in the different. But you only really need that for complex meshes, like if you had like a whole, you know, I've done a video before where I think I did in a video, maybe I haven't, where you have like a whole environment asset, there's tons of verts, and you can shear the whole thing. So anyway, we'll just go ahead and do this. The other part of it is that, you know, we're doing, oops, oh my gosh. Scale Y -1, excuse me. What's the deal here? Oh my gosh, I know. Scale Z -1, excuse me. And so, you know, we animate them like this. And so now that fire effect, you know, is going out along this path that we've created. So now we have like a cool geyser going out, you know what I mean? So the next step is to create this like X shape that we had going here. You know, some of this happening. And so what we want to do, like I alluded to before, is grab this. You want this outer vert to go all the way into the middle here. And we're just going to join it right here. If you, for some reason, had a more complex mesh, I don't know how to describe it, but you could do like a knife cut instead with K. You click. And then you can do knife projection, which is even better. I don't know why you can't do it. To do knife projection, you have to create a new object. And it takes those verts and it slices it into the second object. I don't know that there's a way to do it without making a new object. But because it's so simple, we can just join those with J. We'll go ahead and delete this. So we'll grab this, Shift D, scale X -1, enter, flip normals, grab them all, Shift D, or duplicate, or yeah, so A, Shift D, scale Z, -1, enter, flip normals. Go ahead and remove doubles and go into this one to make sure we're all normalized and consistent with our normals. So now, go ahead and grab this along the x-axis. You know, we got something like this going on. So it's not like too interesting yet. But when we oh my gosh, why does it keep doing that? This, you know, we have something a little more interesting happening there. You can see like right here where those particles are meeting and they're mirrored, you know, so they sort of create something that matches up. As they go out, you know, they sort of break apart naturally because of the different things in the texture here. And as they get cut, you know, because it's cut down the middle or, you know, at an angle like this, and they merge, it creates sort of, you know, like they're separating from the main mass here, and that looks cool. You'll notice that what we have is like a cross. So basically, I actually do this in Engine, but you just do this. So now we grab those same things, and again, you're animating one thing. Just the XUVs. So now you have this going on. Really wish you could turn off the highlighting. But basically it looks like how it looks in the engine. And honestly, that's it. This is your new mesh that you'd use. We'll go through on how to create a good texture for it. So let's open up Photoshop. $512. Doesn't have to be that big, but here we are. And we'll actually make it opaque. So the first thing, and the way I, just by projecting it, let's see here. Well, I'll have to wait till we're in the engine. I'm not quite sure yet. But depending on your shader and sort of default shader behavior when you scale your UVs on the X and Y, you'll want it along this edge. Because that's generally where you're going to want to stretch it. Because if you did, like if you had this flipped, whoops, like up and down here, the texture, the when you scale towards 0, then it actually expands outward, like in a way that doesn't look good. I'll explain it here in a sec. But so let's get to the texture. So, you know, the foundation of it is that you have some white stuff in here. And then you got some black stuff out here. This particular effect that we have going on here looks better with more hard edges. You can, these, I don't know if you want to just call them soft edges, but there's still hard edges, but they're low opacity. When you start doing soft edges, it starts to blur together when it's flying by with that effect. So that's going to give you more of like a misty, cloudy thing. So you may not want that, but you may want that. So it's going to be your call. New layer here. And basically, just cut into it. You're going to have to experiment a lot with it to match sort of like what you want. I usually do some big cuts like this, and that's about it. And then in Engine, I actually scale it pretty good. So let's say, you know, we had this, but then in here, so this is what I mean by the X and Y. And then the shader will make it so it doesn't repeat. But, you know, when you scale X like this, you can see it kind of gets repeated more. And so maybe you want that. You know, so now you have that. So you kind of have more sort of particles flying through. I actually end up doing the opposite. Have something like this. So it kind of lengthens it. But it gives it nice sort of rhythm and like squirminess, I guess. But that's going to be up to you, like in your animation, just when you're working with your shader here. And really, like that's it. You can, you know, sort of take it to the next level. This part, you can kind of do the same thing. Do a little bit of that. And then like 50% sort of situation. Cut in a little bit more. Maybe go back in. This white part doesn't have too much going on. But it's just going to depend on your effect. Like if maybe you want it to, you can do things like, you kind of like follow this edge. Something like that going on. And we'll do real text. So now you can see it's really not too much different. We brought that into Blender. You can, wow, that didn't update. That's why it's not too much different, because I didn't pick it. So that's not too great, you know, it got pretty light in the middle there. That's why generally there's this, at least in my mind, there's this separation here. between the light and the dark, like an extreme one. And like I mentioned, you can go and soften some of this. It looks a lot lighter than it will be actually in the game. Alt R over here. So now you have something like this going on. Again, if you didn't like sort of the shape of that, kind of duplicate it out. You have that. You might find that you want to do something a little different, like that. It's going to be hard to match it up. It's not going to be matched up, just FYI. I guess we can match it right here. Mailing this. This is getting silly, but oh, I goofed that up. I cut through it right there. Anyway, we'll just leave it at that. So now you have this. It's a little hard because it's, you know, you have this angle, but then they're also going at another angle, and so these look just kind of straight right now. Do you know what I'm saying? Even if we like go like that. So you could try like, you might get that it just sort of like fights against it. So this is more like what we would want, right? But going the other way. So we can try things like, we'd want to do is like, I mean, we could do this too. It might be enough. And you'll just have to mess around, see if it works for you. Yeah, so that looks pretty hot. You can see it's kind of thin, which is what we kind of maybe would assume. So maybe we could do this, but then maybe just rotate it. You're going to get like a up and down rhythm if we stuck with that. We'll keep it just like this because that's pretty cool. Grab X, you know, go along there. So you have something more like that going on. And again, we can bring this in. It's not ideal. Having that zigzag shape would be badass, but it would take a bit of work. I mean, not like a lot of work, but it's going to take some messing around to make sure it's like you get big shapes, but also that they're really like that. So maybe that's like too much, you know, because now it's like reaching all the way across. Let me do that. But then again, they're kind of pointing up now. It's hard, but you can get there. It just takes some tweaking. That's all. That tweaking always takes a long time. Let's go ahead and go back to our other one. Yeah, that's basically it for that. And then in your animation, you know, you just animate those UVs. Go ahead and bring that up for this one. What I've done is that I actually have 4 different meshes here. And so for like each main cut / whatever spike, there's 2. There's the background and the foreground. The reason is that so I could blend these together. That way I could have like opaque background and then like this lit up one right here. Because if you lay them on top of each other, you know, with, at least because I wanted some opaque shading, you get this, where this is on top now, you know, that cuts through, and so you don't have this glow in the middle here. But if that's a little too complex for you, we can do this. You may already be thinking what I'm about to do. But basically, it just make it all happen. in one mesh. So we have this here. But we could also just do this. W subdivide, join, delete. Do L, Shift D. Then you do scale X -1, and then you rotate it around. That wasn't perfect, so we're going to go ahead and merge that center. Shift D, scale X -1. I think I forgot to flip the normals. Yeah. Doubles, Control N. There we go. Shift D, scale Z -1. Little normals. Then remove doubles. Grab these. Scale them out. Whoops. Scale them out. Gosh, why does it keep doing that? Because I'm hitting that other window? Whatever. So now you have this shape. And you animate exactly the same way, just along the x-axis. So now you have it coming out like this. And that looks pretty hot to me. And then it's all just on one mesh. The reason I like having it on a separate mesh is I like to animate like just along like here. And so like I can scale it down. I can scale down this one. And I can scale down this one like that. You know what I mean? And so they can keep their length. It's a bit harder to do it on this. You can, you know, get some okay looks by just doing one axis like this. And then, you know, maybe this. That looks all right, but then you can see like the whole shape is sort of changing. But the trade-off is that it's all on one mesh. You can do stuff like this, sort of change the shape a bit, which is really nice. Stuff like that going on. So yeah, I guess we'll just bust out an animation real quick. I'm not gonna save this because it's the exact same mesh. So let's do cross. We'll do the one that's one mesh. Bring that in the scene. Doesn't have a texture yet. Where'd you go? There it is. Go ahead and duplicate this one. Map. Go ahead and drag it onto that. But we'll go ahead and use the texture that we were making. It looks a little bit different. It'll let us give us some room to play. So go ahead and keep these at the default. Need to. You can see there's some like artifacts. I got rid of them, which is nice. So then you just have to think, you know, you imagine your effect, and here's where, again, where the tweaking comes in for the texture. So maybe, you know, some of this is on the material. Ugh, why does it do that? Go ahead and flip it around. Even if the shader is like rendering it, there's a default Unity behavior that'll only grab like front-facing polygons, and that's why I couldn't click on it. There's a bit of a glitch with it. I feel like it's Unity related. You can see here, it's like not drawing. I don't know if it's like anti-aliasing settings. I would guess that it is. Gives a little gap in there. And so to fix that, you generally just have to do like a little bit of an, doesn't seem to be working. Negative offset here on the Y, looks like. And it fixes it. It's really minor. I do think it's an anti-aliasing setting thing. So if you're not using that, then probably no big deal. So maybe we'll take this texture just a little bit. Oh, right, like I mentioned, it's could be the color cutoff settings, the intensity settings here. Like I mentioned, I like to have this sort of opaque thing going on the outside here. We're still getting a bit of artifacts there. We'll fix it here in a sec. One of the things you can do is give yourself a tiny gutter here, like one. I usually do 2 pixels. Delete, delete, save it, and that fixes it. It's weird. I feel like it's a bug, but could be anti-aliasing things, could be repeat texture things. I'm not sure. I don't know if bug's the right word, but I feel like it's a common problem that it's a bug. I don't know. I mean, it might be working as sort of intended, quote unquote, but it doesn't look great. So I think this needs to be lightened just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and grab dodge tool. Just hit that a bit. It's kind of hard to tell, but you know. Oh no, it showed up. Okay, I was looking at the wrong thing. Give us a bit there. And oops. Just seems a little bit lacking in the texture there. If we could just go in another layer. Have a couple that really reach up all the way there. Maybe drop the opacity. Not quite the look I was looking for. Yeah, looks a little bit cooler. Just want a little bit of edge there. Where's our... And then, like I mentioned, you just animate along this X offset here. Go ahead and bring it into view better. So it's looking pretty dope. And you've probably seen sort of effects like that with like a cross. When you're doing it in the editor, sometimes it jumps to like huge numbers, like when you're just scrolling. Stuff like that. It's a little bit sort of like watery looking right now. Maybe wouldn't love that. One of the things you can do is scale out along the x-axis. Still going super fast. Still not quite great. Would expand a bit here. That's probably more of a texture problem there. We can go in and you can, I haven't been successful in it. I tried to do it before this video. But you can do some distortion map stuff too. So not only are you like scrolling here, but you could really break up these shapes with some distortion maps and make it look really fiery and really badass. But let's see here. I'd like to fix that just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and crack this open and give us more room to work with. What's interesting about this is that you're not getting any distortion because these are all triangles. I mean, it's technically distortion because it's scaled, but it's not. You're not getting any like you would like when I showed you like when I was just scaling the mesh down, like when we very first started. Because these are all tries, you don't get any of that, which is really cool. So I got a little fatter. So now we have more room to work with. Is that the right one? No? There it is. And you'd really want that, especially if you're doing like some distortion map stuff. Go ahead and do that. that. You can see some of the problems that maybe we just need to like cut way into it. And you're just gonna have to experiment. Maybe that looks awful. So you can see this is where it's like all gone, like where it went all the way down, and it sort of disappears. But that's something, you can work with. You could make that be something to your advantage. Same thing, not looking so great. You can kind of see that actual shape now because I scaled it up a bunch. But then you get something like that, and that's not really exactly what you would want. Our original mesh was looking a little bit better, I think. Or texture, excuse me. That was like almost getting there. And it might take some tweaking, like with your mesh and things like that too. I did red and black before, so now I'm like, let's try something different. It's kind of gross. So that's looking okay. Just trust that if you really work at it, you can get some cool stuff going. Mess up the glow a bit. It's kind of gross, but kind of cool in a way. You can turn this to additive too if you like. I don't know how good the effects will be, but stuff like that, looking kind of ghostly. That's looking pretty cool. It wasn't the exact effect, but I think you can start to understand why this is pretty neat. We just got a little bit softer here. Yeah, it's neat. I know it's probably pretty blown out. Bring the opacity up a little bit. Stuff like that. Check your colors, that's pretty neat. So just to be thorough and real quick, go ahead and click on this, click on animation, click create, and we'll do x/tutorial Annie. And I'll create all the stuff that we need. I usually like to, in fact, let's do it. Let's not, well, no, I'll just keep it. Usually I'll do like, you can still do it. An extra pivot here to mess with. That way you'll instantiate with this one. And then you can make some adjustments here if you need. But I usually have like multiple pivots so that you can animate things on different axes without influencing other stuff, like in the animation. And then if you need to make other sort of randomizing adjustments, then you can scale it like on the parent, and then like it won't mess with the animation. Yeah, I cover that normally in other videos. I just didn't want to have to fudge with it right now. So basically, I start here. It's actually undo recording, and I like this value, but our offsets we'll keep here. So here, you just start by doing 1. So over the course of 1 second. Whoops, it wasn't recording. Oh no, it just defaulted in here. So let's go ahead. Oh, it wasn't recording. That's a little weird. Oh well. And we went the wrong way. If we hit play, you'll see it's a little bit weird. Maybe you like that sort of pulsing, but that comes from the default curves here. Do a right tangent, do linear, tangent, do linear. So now you have something more consistent like that. Something that I did, it's looking a little weird. I wonder if I could just... not too much better. Anyway, this is just a shitty texture, honestly. I'm gonna cheat and bring back our other one. Again, just know that you can get some good textures. Unfortunately, like if you adjust, all these are one value, like in the editor, in the shader sort of thing. It's one float 4, and so if you, even if you're just animating that one value, if you go back and like change the default here, it's still set to this, and so you'd have to just kind of annoying. Still not perfect. Try this. That looks a little bit cooler. And part of it's because we're doing this sort of cross-shaped one, so it's gonna animate a little bit differently. We can scale it around, try and fix some of that stuff. Now let's do more like a really dark red. It's fully opaque. And then, yeah, we can keep that as red. Might even slide to the left a little bit so we get some white, and then really bring this down. It's almost black, but then we can have the glow here. You know, it's kind of lighten things up here. Gonna add some value to it. And we scroll along here. That's a little bit cooler. Another thing is that I did that. Excuse me. So that's probably closer to what you would want. It depends. The reason I did this is that, again, if you're doing like a distortion map, you'd want more mesh room to work with. But kind of dragging at this point. Go ahead and finish up here real quick. One. Play it. I did that again, didn't I? So you have something like that. You may want to like speed it up. You can just drag this in, or you can increase the value to 2. You know, depending on the effect, you don't need much. Like my particular effect is like this. It's really fast. It comes and goes quickly. So you may not need anything that's like too, you know, you may not necessarily need like a distortion map to make it look really, really fiery or cool or dynamic. Because it's more about just something sort of explosive happening like this. But I hope this, you know, finds you well. Works out okay for you. I mentioned before that someone requested a sort of intro to building a foundation to do like a character action game engine. So we'll probably be doing that. I have a wedding this next weekend, not this weekend, but the next. So I'll be out of town, and I'm dreading it, but except I've traveled to Arizona, I don't want to go. But anyway, the sports have been great, as always. If you have any recommendations, let me know. If you have any tips, let me know. Any criticisms about the stream, about what I create, let me know. But again, the support's been amazing. I really appreciate it. If you want to support financially, you can go to patreon.com/cultureattack and support these tutorials or support the work that I do. Cases Wild and Citadel Deep, which I'm working on right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.